The lies of MAGA and Donald Trump are alive and well at the Fox propaganda network, long after Donald Trump lost the 2020 election and Republicans in general lost in 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. And even after the $787 million payout that the Fox propaganda network had to pay because of their dishonesty. And if you have any doubt about that, I want you to watch this interaction between Sean Hannity and Steve Ducey of the Fox propaganda network. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert buttons before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we got a couple of clips to play in this video, but I'm going to start with this one. And it's not a spicy or heated exchange between, Steve Ducey, who is Peter Ducey's father, that annoying reporter who always asks, Karine Jean-Pierre and Jen Psaki when she was the press secretary, the young guy who constantly annoys President Biden and the guy who President Biden called a stupid SOB. Well, Steve Ducey is his father, right? And he's the guy in the vest. And then you have Sean Hannity here. These two have been colleagues for years. And I want you to watch this exchange in which Hannity seems to get testy just a little bit with the fact that Steve Ducey is fact-checking him and Donald Trump.
Independents, because here in the state there are 300,000 Democrats, 300,000 Republicans, 400,000 independents. If they all show up, they're going to make a big difference.
It definitely is a possibility. I love the people of New Hampshire. I love the state of New Hampshire. I don't like their system, what they call an open primary, where people, they were switching in the last number of weeks from Democrat to independent.
October 6th,
so they could wreak a little havoc inside the Republican Party. Their thinking is, okay, if we help one candidate, in this case, it would be Nikki Haley, get over the hump, then, okay, that's more money that whoever the inevitable Republican candidate is, it seems like Trump by a long shot. I think if Trump wins this tomorrow by the margins we're seeing, it is over. I think a question for Nikki Haley, who I think ran a great campaign. Ron DeSantis ran a great campaign. All the Monday morning quarterbacks don't mean a thing to me. He went to all 99 counties, Ron did, in Iowa.
Ultimate retail politician.
And he went out, he asked people for a vote. In any other year, what did he have, 21, 22%? That would be a great showing in Iowa. Right. But I keep saying about Donald Trump that he defies all conventional political gravity.
That's an understatement.
Right. That says, well, to you
Why
it is.
Is that all
What's happening to you, Steve? Are you moving to the left on me? What are you doing?
I am screen left right now.
That's true.
And so you can just feel the awkwardness there at the end. And the thing is, when Ducey fact-checked him initially about claims, because essentially what Hannity was doing was regurgitating claims that of Donald Trump, that in New Hampshire there was mischief going on and Democrats were actually voting in New Hampshire's Republican primary or switching from Democrat to Republican to engage in that sort of mischief. And it's simply not true. As Steve Ducey points out, the fact of the matter is that registration of that or party switches, those expired back in October of 2023. So what Sean Hannity says in the past number of weeks, Democrats have been switching to Republicans to give Nikki Haley a leg up. It's not true. He's just regurgitating a Donald Trump talking point. And when he seems irritated when, Steve Ducey fact-checked him. And then at the very end, for no reason, when Steve Ducey said that what Sean Hannity just said was an understatement, Hannity's like, are you moving to the left on me? What's going on here? And I'll remind you, before we get into, Hannity's lies and Trump's issues with Steve Ducey, because those are also well known. Donald Trump despises Steve Ducey. I just want to remind you that Steve Ducey is no saint, right? During the Dominion voting system defamation suit, and again, which Fox had to pay nearly $800 million, folks, $800 million. We saw text messages that were gathered during discovery between Sean Hannity and Steve Ducey about the 2020 election. And, Hannity is complaining in these text messages that, Fox News destroyed us every day. You don't piss off the base every day. They don't care. Nope. They're journalists. At one point, Steve Ducey complains about, we might as well tell people to stop watching at 9 a.m. and turn the TV back on at tonight at 9. It's going to be bad. Mark my words. But but no, there is nothing we can do to fix it. Nope, too late. The only thing we can hope for is Trump to come on Fox and say it's his favorite channel. That's what happens in the dream sequence. This is Steve Ducey. Good luck with that, says Hannity. So even Steve Ducey, who has become more critical of Donald Trump over the past, I would say, year, even after the 2020 election when Donald Trump was fomenting the big lie, Steve Ducey was upset that occasionally the Fox propaganda network would fact check the lie, occasionally, that they wouldn't, augment and signal boost at all times Trump's big lie, because even Ducey was afraid it would terrify the base, that it was a bad business decision. So I just want to be clear, even though Hannity is obviously much worse, Steve Ducey is hardly a bastion of journalistic ethics. Like virtually everybody at the Fox propaganda network, he is a snake, just considerably less venomous than Sean Hannity. Now, Donald Trump constantly complains about Steve Ducey now because, again, Steve Ducey will fact check. So funny to watch Steve Ducey of Fox and Friends desperately trying to save Ron DeSanctimonious, a sinking ship. Whatever happened to that guy? This was from January 10th. Okay, so it was very recent. Another one. So, and when Steve fact-checked him, when Ducey fact-checked him, he says, "So Steve, I know you don't think people cheat in elections, but they do. Nevertheless, I had an idea on how we can solve the problem with Steve. Exchange the weekend hosts with the weekday hosts, and everybody will be happy." So he just doesn't like. Trump can't handle the fact that Steve Ducey now will occasionally fact-check, but even, again, unwatchable rhino Steve Ducey of Fox and Friends is suffering mightily from a lack of interest and ratings decline, with Steve being the principal factor, okay? So that explains a bit of the tension that we saw there at the end between Sean Hannity and Steve Ducey, right? Because Trump is clearly playing a role. But I want to bring you back to Hannity, because Hannity's dishonesty has also manifested itself in a very interesting way recently. So on January 19th, this is a report from Media Matters. They're talking about recent reports that the S&P and the Dow, right, the stock market, are reaching consistently all-time highs under President Biden, right? And Sean Hannity, when discussing this or mentioning this, he says, yeah, well, what he's not telling you is home sales are the slowest in 29 years. Yeah, stocks did hit an all-time high. What did we learn last week? Is that the stock market impacts 8% of Americans. It does not impact the other 92%. It's one of the main reasons I've never used it as any kind of real barometer in terms of health of our economy. That's what he says now when the stock market is hitting all-time highs under President Biden. And yet, as Media Matters points out, when Sean Hannity was listing Donald Trump's accomplishments from 2017, Trump's first year in office, one of the things he dedicated time to was bragging about how the stock market is at an all-time high. And folks, this is what I've mentioned to you time and time again. Republicans constantly move the goalpost, because here's the reality. I actually agree with Hannity now. I do agree with Hannity now. Of all the major macroeconomic indicators in the economy, in my opinion, and the reason this is my opinion is because most macroeconomists that I've read also reflect that opinion, is that the stock market is one of the least important macroeconomic indicators because of precisely the reason that Sean Hannity described, right? It directly impacts very few Americans. But I also believe that's the case no matter who is president. Right now, my guy, right, the Democrat, Joe Biden, is president. So even though I'll mention this, the only reason I brag about the stock market under President Biden is because Republicans brag about it when it's doing well under a Republican. And I don't believe by double standards, right? If we have a macroeconomic indicator and it's a reason that we look for, or a barometer that we look at for economic success or the success of a president, then I'm going to do that too, right? Even though, again, I don't think it's much of a barometer, period. I just want to use their logic against them to make the point. They're the ones constantly moving the goalposts. Because you can bet if, God forbid, Donald Trump becomes president again and the stock market does well under a Trump presidency or a Republican presidency, Sean Hannity will change his tune. It's just what Republicans do. And again, Media Matters has a really good article on it. Now that Joe Biden is president, Sean Hannity doesn't find a record high stock market all that impressive. Hannity, who spent years touting the stock market as a Trump accomplishment, now downplays the S&P hitting a record high. And again, you can read the full report. It's great. A clip, again, when they talk about Donald Trump's accomplishments, Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, stock market at an all-time high. Just absolute hypocrisy from the Fox Propaganda Network. And the Fox Propaganda Network is struggling right now to try to justify the high-performing stock market under President Biden. It's not just Hannity. I want to play you this clip from with Larry Kudlow, who used to work for Donald Trump. He's a financial analyst and a host on the Fox Propaganda Network, and Sandra Smith, an alleged straight news journalist.
Real quick, final question on the Dow, S&P 500, U.S. stock market in all-time highs today. Second record so far in 2024. If we can pop up the Dow, what's happening here and what? I don't know. We were scratching our heads earlier.
Stock market's rallying because it's anticipating that.
Right here. I wanted to skip to this part.
Trump has said several times the last few days the stock market's rallying because it's anticipating that he will return to the presidency. Oh! I just thought I'm not saying that analytically. That is his view. My experience with Mr. Trump in the years that I worked for him, he's a very good investor. He knows how things work. So you can take it for what it's worth, okay, Sandra?
Good to have you here, Larry.
No refutation whatsoever. They both laugh tongue-in-cheek. Ha, 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 that's so funny, while insinuating that if there's any good news about the stock market under a Democrat or under President Biden, you have to give a Republican credit for it. That's what Trump's trying to do. And Larry Kudlow was trying to launder that to the Fox audience. And if Sandra Smith, if she was really a credible journalist, she would clarify, I know you're joking, Larry. Obviously, we can't credit a Republican who's out of office with the success of a stock market performance under a Democratic president. Just to clarify, Larry's joking. She could have even done it in a collegiate way in that respect, but she didn't. She was like, oh, wow, that sounds really good, because, of course, she didn't mention President Biden in her analysis, nor did Kudlow, right? Because they will do everything in their power to avoid talking about it. And if you don't believe me, listen to Varney here also try to mention it too. This is a guy who has in the past actually given President Biden credit for strong stock performance. Listen to how quick he blitzes by it.
All right, check that market. Dow's up 200, Nasdaq's up 110. Nice way to start a Monday. A Honduran migrant and alleged child sex predator.
So did you get whiplash? I had whiplash. You know, the Fox Business channel, right? The Fox Business, folks, not even Fox News, Fox Business. Didn't want to talk business at all. They wanted to talk about potential sex trafficking from a Honduran migrant, okay? That's how quick even Fox Business tries to avoid spending too much time on positive economic sentiment under a Democratic president, because they know that the economy is a wedge issue on which Republicans have an advantage, even though the facts don't bear that out, right? As we've talked about, most macroeconomic indicators perform better when Democrats are president than Republicans. But Republicans enjoy a colossal advantage with respect to perception. And that's ultimately what matters most. Facts don't speak for themselves. It's great to have the facts on your side. You would think it would make it easier to make a compelling case when you have the facts and Democrats have the facts. But we have failed to make a compelling case with the facts. We have failed to persuasively convey the facts. And right now, Trump enjoys an advantage, and he's openly praying he says that he's wishing for some sort of economic catastrophe in this next year. So it would be on Biden's watch and would hurt Biden politically and the Democrats politically, and not him. So as you can see, this is the cynicism of the Fox Propaganda Network. Sean Hannity and Steve Ducey are both well-known liars, but because Ducey is considerably less of a liar than Hannity and fact-checked him, Hannity, who's a Trump ally, is upset. And, are you going to the left on me? Well, I suppose if the left means, speaking facts, which I guess makes sense, right? Because the left is more likely to do that than the right, then maybe that's true. And then Hannity's changing his metrics for what makes a successful president and a successful economy. And then so is the rest of the Fox Propaganda Network. This network is so embarrassing. It's so pathetic. And every single one of them, with the exception of Jessica Tarlov, should be made fun of relentlessly. No credibility whatsoever. Let me know what you think in the comments.